Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Hello to everybody on this Thursday edition of the show. We're saving the best for last because we're talking about training camp, which begins on July 24th for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with us getting closer to training camp, we're going to talk about some sleepers that have a chance to not only make this Buccaneers roster, which is a pretty good roster, I will say, but also potentially making an impact on the team this season. So a lot of fun players to talk about, a little bit different. We obviously did a PR roundtable over the last 2 weeks with players on offense and defense, so we'll talk about all of them and get into anything that the Pewter people want to talk about on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague at pewterreport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, welcome back to the show, and how's it going?
Matt, it's going great. And with training camp less than 2 weeks away, really excited to dive in today's show to where we get to talk about some sleepers, guys that you may not first think of when you think of the Buccaneers in training camp, but as you mentioned, guys who could really carve out a role with this team and become even starters.
Yeah, so I feel like first, before we get into it, we should probably kind of detail or describe what a sleeper means because there are certain guys that I think it's a little bit different than, hey, this guy's going to take the next step. For example, Yaya
Yeah.
Diaby was a starter last year. He's not a sleeper. He's on everybody's radar. So this is more for players that are still up and coming, but maybe weren't starters last year or are rookies this season that are a later round pick or maybe an undrafted free agent that have an opportunity to make this team make an impact in the preseason and in training camp. It could help the Buccaneers along the way. I think a great example is someone like Christian Izien, who ended up
Yeah.
being a starter for the Bucs last season. He is the perfect example and poster boy of what a sleeper is because he was an undrafted free agent out of Rutgers. Certainly not a guarantee to make this team, and then ends up playing a critical role for the Bucs, and gets an interception in the first 2 games of the season, and
Yeah.
obviously played an important role on the Buccaneers defense. So that is certainly a guy that fits the mold, and there could be a couple of undrafted free agents that fit it this year.
Yeah, and it's kind of telling that over both of our roundtables, we first did offense and then defense this week. There was, I think, the two highest guys were 2 fifth-round picks. So as you mentioned, guys that really have been flying under the radar, but may quickly
Yeah.
be in the team's plans. Like you mentioned, Christian Izien, last year, Marquise Watts, he kind of flashed a little bit, might get a bigger role this year. But defining sleepers, there's a whole litany of players that could really make their case.
Absolutely. I'm about to put into the chat the sleepers on offense, which we will start with. So obviously we'll talk about it here, but if you want a little more in-depth analysis on every single guy, you can check out the PR roundtable on pewterreport.com. And starting off, this was actually a suggestion by SR Scott Reynolds as we begin with the offense. Definitely out of left field, probably not the first sleeper on the board that you probably would imagine, but Scott went with Cameron Johnson, the undrafted free agent out of Barton College, which is in the Carolinas, I believe, because he got the attention of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers based on his pro day, which he did at NC State. He did not play at NC State, but the way it works is if you play for a very small college, you can go to the pro day of a big college that's relatively close by. So that's why he did it at NC State. And, Scott goes on to say that obviously it's a loaded wide receiver room with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan obviously was an earlier draft pick this season. But he goes on to talk about Cameron Johnson saying last year he caught 51 passes for 875 yards and 7 touchdowns. Also threw a 58-yard touchdown pass as a quarterback, on a play or to his quarterback. He's 5'8" and 190 pounds, so not the size guy. He looks rather minute next to Mike Evans and some of the other wide receivers that are in there. But he had a 4.46 40-yard dash at the NC State Pro Day that I was talking about before, and a 37-inch vertical. Several players have said that Johnson is an unheralded guy who really stood out during OTAs and minicamp. And on top of that, he brings a kick and punt return experience to the table that the Bucs, may go to during the preseason with so much vagueness when it comes to the new kickoff rules this year. So, Adam, this is a guy that obviously is not going to crack the top three, but if the Bucs end up making room for this wide receivers or for the wide receivers that they have, it may be for Cameron Johnson, who ends up making this team and will probably have more of an impact on special teams than anything that he'll do at wide receiver.
I think so. And I agree with what Scott had to say, even Scott mentioning the point of the fact that Johnson has had some return experience, whether that was kick and punt return experience back at Barton College, which is kind of intriguing. And when you look at his size and build, he's not the biggest guy, but he could be a little bit of a bigger Devin Tompkins and kind of fitting that role as maybe not your typical wide receiver, but somebody that could be a gadget guy, a return specialist. And his size and speed is very comparable to Devin Tompkins when I think Tompkins ran a 4.47, Johnson ran a 4.46. Both have a really high vertical. So definitely a sleeper and somebody that can really splash and make some big plays during training camp. And with all the focus being on guys like McMillan, Trey Palmer, even Rakim Jarrett, Johnson might be forgotten about. So it's important to also mention his name as well.
Yeah, and some of the guys you just talked about are kind of the direct competition for Cameron Johnson. And it's funny because in years past, the Bucs had a lot of undrafted free agent wide receivers that were really lobbying for a job on this team. You go back a couple of years ago, there was Devin Tompkins and Jarrett Stearns was a guy. Yep. And I'm trying to think of the other guy that was on that practice squad as well. But there was another undrafted free agent. Oh my God, his name is slipping my mind. I wrote about him a couple of weeks ago too. But he was part of that group with Devin Tompkins and Jarrett Stearns, who didn't even end up making the team. And then you had Rakim Jarrett last year, who made an impact as an undrafted free agent. So Jarrett is probably the top guy that he's going to have competition against. Cameron Johnson, I'm talking about. And then, of course, Sterling Shepard is that other, not cog in the machine, but that other kind of like X factor, because obviously he's a veteran of the game. He has a relationship with Baker Mayfield going back to Oklahoma. And I'm also curious to see how Sterling Shepard looks with a lot more time in this offense. Like, he had only been there a couple of days. I don't really think there was too much that we can kind of gather from what he did, because as he said, his head was spinning. There's so many new things to learn. But Cameron Johnson, the speed, I would love to see what type of gadget plays they try to run for him, because the Bucs offense has a lot more motion. And Liam Cohen, whether it's with Kentucky or with the Rams, loves those speed guys. So I'm not saying it's just going to be strictly end arounds, but maybe a screen game, maybe, trick play. He could end up passing the football. We'll see. But there's a lot that they can do with Cameron Johnson.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned Sterling Shepard, because I believe the battle between Shepard and Johnson, it'll really come down to one of those two for the wide receiver 6 spot. And mentioning Shepard, it'll be really interesting to see. He's not a sleeper, but someone I'm excited to see in pads, and just to see if he's lost a step after a couple really tough injuries. Can he still compete with these younger guys like Cameron Johnson, like Rakim Jarrett? And if not, I mean, it'll be a battle for Johnson, and he could really end up with the wide receiver 6 spot.
Kalen Geiger is the guy I was thinking of.
Yes, Geiger. He did the backflip in one of the training camps.
He did. Yeah. Kalen Geiger was the other player that I was thinking about. And to your point about Shepard, that's always the other question when it comes to these veteran guys, is how much does he have left in the tank? Because it's one thing when Baker Mayfield is texting him and asking him about it, and he's like, I think I got a little more left in me. Because he's not going to let his buddy down, and he's not going to say, if he wants to get signed by a team, he's not going to say to the Bucs, Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah, I've lost it.
Yeah, don't even fly me out for a tryout.
Yeah, not
And
worth it.
obviously he's going to take that up. And for Shepard, this is a really interesting opportunity because I am not going into the season believing that every single Bucs wide receiver is going to be available for every single game. That's just the nature of it. I'm not sitting here saying it's a doomsday scenario either. And Mike Evans is only going to play in 5 games, or Chris Godwin is going to have something go on. But like, if I was betting on it, I'd probably say like Mike may not play 17 games this season, and probably not Chris Godwin either. That's just the nature of them getting older, and just the nature of the NFL. The Bucs have been so lucky overall with relatively being healthy at wide receiver
Yeah.
that they got to have other plans in place. And I go back and think about a couple seasons ago when Chris Godwin got injured earlier in the season, actually when he came back from the ACL injury. So we're talking about 2022. And Mike Evans got suspended after that fight against the
Yep.
Saints. And it was really just Russell Gage and company. I mean, this year to think like, okay, well, in that situation, McMillan would be your number 1 guy. Trey Palmer's probably number 2, but who's number 3 in that
Right.
situation? It's likely either Sterling Shepard or Rakim Jarrett, or if Cameron Johnson can kind of make some noise, it brings a different outlook for the Bucs, where they might not be as gangbusters down the field, but can get a little bit of something with Cameron Johnson. Can it be an upgrade over Devin Tompkins? Yeah, I absolutely think so, because Tompkins caught everything in training camp and in practice, but that wasn't always the case when he was in the games. He did have a nice touchdown against the Saints earlier in the year, a road game for the Bucs going to New Orleans. But there were other times that Devin Tompkins didn't really come through. And when you're only on the field for a little bit, you
You got
kind
to
of
make the
need to
most
make
of it.
every rep count, and he didn't necessarily do so. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Johnson can do, because he's flashy, he's fast, he's athletic, and that kind of fits more for Liam Cohen's offense more than any others that are available.
Definitely. And I also think you make a great point in talking about the fact that it's really difficult to assume that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, even to a further extent, Rashad White, Kate Otten, they're going to be available for all 17 games, playing a majority of the snaps. It like in football, that's like hard to come by. And that fact, the Bucs were lucky in that regard that they had them available every single game. You can't assume that, and that's where guys like
Yeah.
Cameron Johnson come into play, where you need that depth. You need those guys by the end of the season where you may be down Evans or Godwin. You need that guy to step up.
No question about it. So we're going to move this discussion along, talk about another player actually going to the offensive line. It is Elijah Klein that has the potential to be a sleeper this year. He was obviously drafted in the 6th round, I believe, by the Buccaneers out of UTEP, a school that predominantly ran the football. That is essentially all they did on offense. So Klein is certainly in the program for the Buccaneers of reviving this running game that was dead last in rushing yards, not just once, but over the last 2 seasons. So as it stands right now, Klein is on the outside looking in terms of a starting job. 6th-round picks are not guaranteed to make the team, but we know how the Bucs like to develop offensive linemen, whether it's Alex Kappa or Luke Gedeke, or now Cody Mauch, who's going into his 2nd season and 2nd year as a starter as well. But the reason why Klein could kind of slip in there and be a starter, it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. The bad news would be that Ben Bredeson and Sua Opeta just aren't cutting it, and they end up being Matt Filer 2 and 3.0, which
Yeah.
wouldn't be great for the Buccaneers, because they've gone the route the past 2 seasons of starting an offensive lineman right away, and it's been mixed results. Obviously, Luke Gedeke, it was drastic, but he picked it up the next season. Mauch, I think, fared way better, but obviously not a
Still up
finished
and
product
down.
by any means. So you're kind of going into a year where you're already going to be starting one rookie with Graham Barton. That's certainly not a sleeper by any means. do you really want your interior offensive line to be a rookie center, a rookie left guard, and a right guard that's going into his second year that we have a lot of high expectations for, but we can't also guarantee that he's just going to flourish the way that Gedeke did and other offensive linemen of the past that the Bucs have kind of given a similar situation to.
Yeah, and I think that strengthens the case for either Bredesen or Opeta to be the left guard. But when you look at Elijah Klein, I mean, there's a reason the Bucs selected him in the 6th round. Like his tenacity, his personality. When we got to talk to him after he was selected, you can kind of tell he's that nasty guy that kind of like Luke Gedeke just wants to play some smash mouth football in the trenches and really establish himself in that regard. So when you mentioned like UTEP being so run heavy, I mean, that's exactly what the Bucs needed, right? They
Yes.
need a big offensive lineman who can really plug the lanes, block for Rachaad White, clear some space for him to where he can average more than 4 yards a carry, because it was such a struggle last year to get the run game going. And in this year with the new offense, it might experience the same struggles early on to where they're not consistently running the football. But by mid-season, let's say Opeta or Bredesen, maybe they're not cutting it. Maybe they are that Filer and Stinney again. It wouldn't hurt plugging in Elijah Klein and seeing if at left guard, the combination of him, Barton, and Malk, they can be a really promising trio going forward, having 2 established tackles as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because even though the Bucs have had their issues with starting certain offensive linemen and it doesn't work out, typically when they do make those changes, and sometimes it's by necessity, like for example, when Alex Kappa broke his arm during
Yeah.
the Super Bowl run, they had to play Aaron Stinney, but Stinney did a great job in his first iteration starting for the Buccaneers. Or when Gedeke, got replaced, it ended up being better for the Bucs in the long run, because eventually Gedeke goes back to right tackle and they upgraded on the interior at the time in that moment. So
Mhm.
if they keep going down that path, yeah, maybe it doesn't work out with Opeta or Bredesen, whoever ends up winning the job. But Klein comes in and takes care of business. The big question for Klein, of course, is what we talked about already with UTEP being such a run team, is how will he do as a pass blocker? And typically, when a rookie quarterback comes in or a young player, it's always, how's this quarterback going to figure out the offense, particularly when it's a completely different offense than what he's worked with in college. And I
Yeah.
think teams have really smartened up to that, where if they're drafting a quarterback, they're kind of going to run the offense based around what the quarterback knows and is comfortable with, versus, hey, I know you lined up under center a lot, but we're going to go run and gun out of like the shotgun or the pistol or whatever. Teams have obviously smartened up to that. But in this case, that's what it might be for Elijah Klein, where it was run, run, run for UTEP. Now he's got to figure out all these different things with pass protection and certain
All the
looks and
technique
things
that
like
goes
that
with that.
that he never dealt with when he was playing in college. So that's where the development might take a little bit longer. But he's putting his nose to the grind when it comes to figuring out this offense. He's got the flashcards going and everything like that, which is pretty fun to see. So we'll see how long it takes for him to really acclimate to the offense. You could say that about a lot of guys, especially all of the rookies, but like even hearing Sterling Shepard talk about it and hearing Rachaad White say it's kind of a difficult offense, these players are smart enough that they'll figure it out. But when it comes to the beginning of the season, it's a lighter schedule for the Bucs where they have to take advantage of it too. So there are going to be some growing pains. I don't think it'll be as drastic as when Bruce Arians first came here and they were trying to figure out that offense, and then when Dave Canales arrived last year, because it is a quarterback-friendly offense and you can figure it out. Though it will be fun to see. I think Klein, he's here partially because of his personality. He's a bit of a jokester and things like that, but is still serious about his job. I think some people kind of blow that out of proportion. Like, you can be fun loving and jokey, but still like
Be
put your
about your
work in
business.
and get your job done and not be a distraction to the team. And I think that's the case for Elijah Klein. Before we move on to some other sleepers on the offensive side of the football, we got 2 super chats to get to. So without further ado, and thank you guys for the super chats. You know the rule. If you want to cut the line, all you got to do is super chat, and we'll talk about anything, including this $4.99 super chat from Hammy Actual.
Thank you, Hammy.
Who says, thank you very much. Who says, did y'all watch the Loose Cannons with Mad Dog Russo? So evident the national media doesn't know the Bucs. I did not watch the episode, though I am aware that Mad Dog went on the Loose Cannon show. Shout out to those guys. Good dudes. I was actually surprised to see it at first, but hey,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big name, so great for them for getting him on. I grew up in New York. I'm pretty familiar with the Mad Dog. Obviously, Mike and the Mad Dog was a huge show in New York for a very long time. Then they split and went their separate ways. Mike obviously had Mike Francesa had his show for a very long time. Russo had his thing, but he does a lot with baseball as well, and now he's on First Take. Part of, and especially in the New York media, is I'm just gonna say something crazy, even though I don't truly believe it. And Mad Dog can fall into that category at times, especially when he's on First Take and you're just saying really anything to kind of get attention. And yeah, it's unfortunate at times. And I do like Mad Dog. I think he's very entertaining. I think the way he goes into things are very interesting. But yeah, sometimes there's a shock factor to get eyeballs that I don't necessarily agree with, because I think authenticity is really important.
Yeah.
There was a thing where Mad Dog was talking about like the most famous college football programs of all time. And I forgot who he put as number one, but he put like Oklahoma. And no offense to Oklahoma fans and Baker Mayfield and Sterling Shepard and all those guys, but it was like, I don't know, like Alabama has had dynasties of football teams, and Georgia obviously has got a team rocking and rolling right now. There's a couple other college football programs I think you could say that would be ahead of Oklahoma. I'm gonna have to find that video soon and look
Yeah.
back at it. But I was like, I don't know about this one. Like, what kind of point are you trying to make? But to answer it, no, I did not watch the Mad Dog interview. Did you, by any chance, Adam?
I did not, but just kind of like piggybacking off of you, like with like First Take and stuff like that, like Stephen A. Smith just kind of making these outlandish points, like just to make points. That kind of sounds like Mad Dog Russo as well. And just the aspect of saying Oklahoma when there's obviously a better answer and a more correct answer, but you're kind of going for that response, and that's what you want. So
Yeah.
we'll have to watch and see what he specifically said about the Bucs, but man, the national media, they've been hating on the Bucs for the past couple of years now. And even with them having made the playoffs for 4 straight years, 3 straight division titles, it doesn't seem like they're getting respect on a team basis and like a player basis, because Levante David, Mike Evans,
Yes.
they're still so underrated. And you had a story earlier this week talking about Yaya Diaby and the fact that he might be next in line, regardless if he gets 10, 15 sacks. They're still going to be like, he's not a top 10 edge rusher. It's really
Right.
hard, and it takes a Bucs player to have this dominant performance like Antoine Winfield Jr. for them to even get any semblance of credit, it seems like.
Yeah, and Antoine Winfield Jr. didn't even make the Pro Bowl, but he won All
Yeah,
Pro. So,
exactly.
go figure in that situation. I will say, I'm really not trying to bash the national media. It's just like local media. I'm not trying to make this local media versus national media type of thing. But local media is there every single day. Like we're at practice, we're asking Todd Bowles stuff. We're in the locker room talking to players and asking them specific stuff as well. And yes, national media, they do have their sources. That's why Adam Schefter's breaking a lot of stuff, and Ian Rappaport and other people obviously do have their sources with the Bucs, but we have our sources as well. There's people we talk to, and when you see us there every single day, that holds a lot of water and information as well. I
Yeah,
get it. If you're national media, you got to look at all 32 teams. There are plenty of teams in the NFL that I couldn't tell you a lot of great information about, because if the Bucs don't play them this year, it doesn't really matter to
right.
Bucs fans. And like my random knowledge of, I don't know, the Indianapolis Colts was probably more important. Not that I have random knowledge about the Colts. I'm just kind of naming a random team. Like that would have been more important last year than it is this year, or the Seahawks or the Cowboys. Like that
Right.
stuff doesn't matter as much when the Bucs don't play them, especially like an AFC team such as the Dolphins. The Dolphins, it matters this year because they have a joint training camp practice, but for the regular
Yeah.
season, unless it's a Bucs Dolphins Super Bowl, anything I say about the Dolphins doesn't matter on the Pewter Report podcast, because we're here to talk about the Buccaneers. And I think another good example of that is, there's an article that came out recently. I actually wrote about it too, kind of giving my own spin on it. But there's an article on Pro Football Network, and it listed one player per team. So it wasn't like they were specifically saying this about the Bucs, but one player that may regress from each NFL team. And spoiler, the person that they said for the Buccaneers was quarterback Baker Mayfield. And if you have good reasoning behind it, fine. Like, it's understandable. He obviously had his struggles with Cleveland. That's the reason why he's with the Buccaneers. But part of the paragraph about Baker was, oh, Dave Canales is leaving, and now he's got to work with the new offensive coordinator. I get that.
That he's worked with.
But he's worked with the offensive coordinator that's coming here. And then on top of that, Liam Cohen's offense is a quarterback-friendly offense. We had Greg Cosell on the show, and he said Liam Cohen's offense is a quarterback-friendly offense. That's perfect for Baker Mayfield. So the overall outlook to say, oh, Baker's going to regress because Dave Canales isn't there, there is a window to point that out. But then when Liam Cohen's the offensive coordinator, it kind of erases.
You got to make that point too. Like, you can't paint one side of the picture and not the other.
Yeah. And also, like, I know we're getting on a tangent now, but whatever. If I were to pick a Bucs player to regress this year, it wouldn't be Baker. I would probably take an older player. Like, honestly, not that I think it's going to happen, but if I were to be asked, which I guess I'm asking myself this right now, if I were to pick a player that's going to regress this year, I'd probably either say Levante or Mike Evans, just based on their age and how long they've been doing it for and what the expectations are for these players. Or I'd say someone like Jamel Dean, who can't catch the football and has been injured. Like, those are guys that I think are way more equipped to be candidates to regress. And again, I'm not saying they're going to regress, but if I had to pick someone, I would pick those guys over Baker Mayfield this season based on all the information that we have. Some comments as well. Bat W says, oh yeah, Mad Dog Russo was completely clueless. He follows that up with, or she follows that up with, it was all just spew the media bias and hate on Baker. And Nathan Elliott says, Mad Dog Russo, an example of national media hate for Baker and Bowles. Yeah, so again, I doubt he's watching the Bucs day in and day out. I doubt he's watching tape on the Buccaneers. But that's sometimes how it goes with national media. And he's been doing it for a very, very long time. But anyway, very entertaining guy and interesting. But I understand why Bucs fans wouldn't be happy about it. LDBC's Most Wanted with a $9.99 super chat. Thank you very much. Says, Saludos, Pewter Report question. Who had a better start to their career, Gedeke or Donovan Smith? Do you think Gedeke can have a better career? Donovan was an Ironman for us and is a two-time champion. All right. Admittedly, I didn't really see the beginning of Donovan Smith's career. I know him and Ali Marpet came in together and obviously went through a lot together. There was a reason why the Bucs kind of let go of Donovan Smith after, he spent his time with the Bucs, and the Chiefs signed him on a relatively cheap deal because remember, the Chiefs let their starting offensive tackle, I believe it was Orlando Pace Jr., go to the Cincinnati Bengals because they didn't want to pay all that money. The Chiefs have shown a history of not wanting to, not that they don't want to pay their guys, but like Tyreek Hill, obviously. If there was anyone you're going to pay, it would be Tyreek Hill, and they let Tyreek Hill walk and get they traded him to Miami so he can get a new contract there. So, I mean, based on, and again, I didn't watch Donovan Smith, but based on his career with the Buccaneers, yes, he was starting left tackle. There were many, many times where people got angry about Donovan Smith because he would either take plays off or he would get a really, really crucial holding penalty. Now, Gedeke, as far as we've seen right now, and I'm looking at this more at just last season and not really his rookie season, he's had some holding penalties, but he's also really, really done a great job on that right side, taking away a lot of great pass rushers. So early on, I would say Luke Gedeke probably has been, off to a better start than Donovan Smith. And as far as health-wise, he's played through some injuries and has been available. Now, Smith has been doing it for a very, very long time, and he was important to the Bucs winning that Super Bowl. I don't want to take that away from Donovan Smith. Also a friend of the program, has been on the show, just like Luke Gedeke has. So I would say, with respect to Donovan Smith, who I know people get mad at him, but he was important and was great, especially that 2020 season when the Bucs
Yeah.
won the Super Bowl. I have to give the nod to Gedeke right now based on what he did in year 2 last season.
I would have to agree with the points that you've made, and do want to say that Donovan Smith, though, like at his peak during that Super Bowl season, was probably slightly better than Luke Gedeke was last season. But when you look
Oh,
at
for
it,
sure.
Smith also battled like inconsistencies, and it got to the point his last season where the Bucs were like, we're not going to bring you back. Like all the holding penalties, I remember watching. It would be like Rashad White would have a big run along the side, or Lenny, and then it was called back for a hold,
Yeah.
and you knew it was on Donovan Smith. It got to that point. So when you look at it, I think Gedeke can have the better career in the aspect of in a second season, he's already playing this well. How much better can he get? I think in the end, he'll be better than Donovan Smith was. And just he doesn't take plays off like you kind of saw Smith did. And he plays through injury, he plays tough. So for that aspect, I would have to agree with you.
Yeah, it's not even like taking full plays off. It's just like you're engaged with the defender, and then you think, "Oh, the
Yeah.
play's over. I can stop," but like the play's still going. And that was kind of more towards like the Jameis years than
Mhm.
Brady, because Brady would get rid of the ball quickly, where Jameis would be running around trying to extend plays, trying to chuck it deep. Where Brady obviously was way more efficient, and that's why he's Tom Brady. And then he had Mahomes, obviously, who is in the same category as Tom Brady. But holding typically is a bad thing in football. But I'll tell you, one thing I want to be holding is a can of Celsius in my hand to have a Celsius energy drink, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. There's so many awesome flavors of Celsius. Love the Arctic Vibe is my personal favorite. You see the Vibe flavors on there: Astro, Galaxy, and Cosmic. Tropical is good as well. Somebody was getting angry in the comments that I believe it was the Oasis Vibe was not getting its proper shout out. So I think it was the Oasis. Might have been another one, but anyway, big time shout out to the Oasis Vibe as well. All great flavors of Celsius. There's no sugar and it's gluten free too. So very beneficial to a lot of people, especially those with gluten allergies. Great substitute for coffee in the morning as well, if you want something a little bit different to kickstart your day. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website. You could punch in your address and it'll tell you the closest location, excuse me, where you could pick one up. Might be a Walmart or a health and fitness store or your bodega.
Bodega.
Nice, nice. And once you keep going to your bodega, you love Celsius, you want more, you want to get it in bulk. You can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. Click on the subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge, you're the captain. I'd recommend getting that variety pack as well, because there's so many great flavors, and variety is the spice of life. So don't limit yourself to one flavor of Celsius when you can catch them all, just like in Pokemon with Ash Ketchum. So have them all over at Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. All right, great super chats. Appreciate all of you again. Made for some good conversation. As Nathan Elliott says, you can get a Celsius at Ollie's. Good stuff, cheap. I don't know what Ollie's is, but cool. Yeah, another spot where you can pick up
Yeah.
Celsius energy drinks. All right, let's move it along with the offensive side of the football. We talked about a wide receiver in Cameron Johnson, offensive guard in Elijah Klein. Next up, a player that is not a rookie. He's going into his second year. That is the House of Pain, Payne
Yeah.
Durham, tight end going into year 2. Adam, what are your expectations for Payne Durham, and how can he be a sleeper this year for the Buccaneers?
Yeah, so looking at Payne Durham, really excited actually to see what he can do in a second season as a Bucs tight end. Last year, kind of had a limited role, only 5 catches for 58 yards. But you see that play there, that was a really good play. It was a play that a former number 87, Rob Gronkowski, even shouted out and saying,
Yes.
like, he made a great catch there. But looking at Payne Durham, he's 6'6", 253 pounds. He's a big guy, like even bigger than Mike Evans, and that's saying something. So for the Bucs, they really need that other big target in the red zone, and I think that's where Durham can thrive. At Purdue, he had a lot of touchdown catches like in the red zone. We saw it at the Senior Bowl when he made a really tough grab like on the side and celebrated with Cody Mauch after. If he can contribute in the red zone, I think that's where he comes into play as a sleeper, because you don't expect much of anything from Durham as being a backup tight end. Like, he didn't contribute at all last year, but he very easily could have 5-6 touchdowns this year and really contribute in that regard. So I think Durham provides value in the red zone, and if he can be even quicker, show some prowess in terms of blocking, he might be next in line right behind Otten.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cade Otton obviously overall is the better tight end, but I do think that Payne Durham is like a little more better equipped to kind of bang around with defenders and take on the physicality and make some difficult catches.
Yeah.
Scott Reynolds and I have talked about this on, as Bat W says, he's got Gronk size. Scott and I have talked about this. Actually, were you there the year Payne Durham was at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. You were there too. Do you remember that play that he made in the red zone? We were on the other side of the field, but his helmet came off. He still made the play, got hit hard. I think he can do that with the Buccaneers. And I think it's important to remember that not every single player is just going to be amazing right away when they join a team. It takes time, it takes development. The offseason workout program is super, super important, especially for offensive and defensive linemen, and in this case, tight ends that have to do some blocking, which I think Payne Durham might be relied on a little bit more this year, just kind of given the state of where O'Keefe is at and what Cade Otton can do more as a receiving tight end. So I think Payne Durham's going to have some opportunities, like you said, in the red zone. Not many teams are going to game plan for Payne Durham. I shouldn't even say not many teams. No teams are going to game plan for Payne Durham. But I think Payne Durham can carve out a little early Cam Brate role for himself, where he might just only get opportunities in the red zone because the Bucs are going to go with that 11 personnel of just one tight end and 3 wide receivers. That's going to be a lot of Cade Otton, but you get into the red zone and get some other looks, some 2 tight end looks, even at the goal line. I could see Payne Durham being that guy, 2nd and 1 at the 1 yard line, or 2nd and goal at the 1 yard line.
Throw
a little play action, dump off the Payne Durham. Obviously, Mike Evans is the king of the the fade pass in the end zone. But I think if you get Payne Durham one-on-one against a safety or a smaller size defensive back, it really can be Payne Durham that gets some looks over Cade Otton. So that remains to be seen. We'll talk about another tight end in a little bit as well. But another sleeper, a little more well-known, but I think in terms of a guy that can move up the depth chart or get more playing time based on his abilities is Trey Palmer is next up. Trey Palmer, we've seen a lot of flashes at him. And while we had Jalen McMillan penciled in to be wide receiver 3, I don't think it's going to be without a fight from Trey Palmer and something that's really going to put the pressure on Liam Cohen and Todd Bowles to either, get Trey Palmer more playing time or even compete with Jalen McMillan to win that role.
Yeah, and as Josh Capo pointed out in the roundtable and discussing Trey Palmer, his speed plays, right? 4.33 speed ranks like 94th percentile amongst wide receivers in the NFL. Like, that dynamic speed and big playability is something that the Bucs were so close to getting at times last season. Like, Baker would throw the ball up to him when Trey Palmer's beat his guy, and it would be maybe an overthrow. Maybe Palmer didn't run it correctly. It was like so close to where the Bucs could have had more big plays last season. But with Trey Palmer, he still has so much value in the Bucs offense because he's unlike the other wide receivers in terms of his skill set. And then also the experience aspect too, because beyond Mike and Chris, man, Trey Palmer is like the most experienced guy on the team with a bunch of rookies and undrafted guys around him. So they're going to rely on him. And when he's like performing, when he's making those plays, like you kind of saw in the Packers game, the Eagles game, like it can be game changing. It can swing the momentum of a game. And so with Trey Palmer, I think he's a sleeper because they drafted Jalen McMillan in the 3rd round. Everybody's
Yes.
gravitating towards him, but you can't forget about Trey, right? The Eminem album
Yeah,
dropping
that's
tomorrow.
right.
Can't forget about
Yeah.
Trey. So
Yeah, very excited for Eminem's new album tomorrow. And yeah, I talked about Trey Palmer in a separate roundtable weeks ago, and I think I said forgot about Trey as well. It's just very fun to say.
yeah, it
Uh,
is.
but to your but to your point, Adam, I'm not ready to put Trey Palmer in kind of the clutch area the way that Kate Otten has been over his first 2 seasons. Remember, he caught a game-winning touchdown with Tom Brady, and he did so with Baker Mayfield as well. So there's a bit of history. But Trey Palmer has made his impact in certain games throughout the year. Like even his first career game against in the NFL, week 1 against the Vikings. Yeah, he only had 2 catches for 8 yards, but he had a touchdown in that game. And from what I remember, it was a pretty important touchdown. And then against the Saints a couple weeks later, 2 for 6, but I believe he had the first touchdown of the game or had one early on that,
Yeah.
really got the ball rolling for the Buccaneers. And then you want to talk about improvement throughout the year. It had games of 20 receiving yards. Let's remember, it was all about Mike and Chris and pretty much Rashad White too, in the receiving game. But as the season went on, he was inconsistent. But then later in the year, he plays pretty well against Jacksonville, and that was a blowout type of game. But he had 4 catches for 42 yards. The next game, while the Bucs overall as a team didn't play well, losing to the Saints 23-13 at home in Tampa, where they could have clinched the division that week, went 4 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. That last week, 2 catches for 10 yards. No one on offense played well for the Bucs in
No.
that game when they beat the Panthers 9-0. But then you move to the playoffs, 1 catch for 56 yards and a touchdown. That was what's on the screen right here, that catch and run, which was a great play. And then, comes back next week against Detroit, 2 catches for 32 yards, just planting some seeds of like potential and what he can be. And Adam, I think you said it really well with the speed. It just allows the Bucs to open up so many more things that Trey Palmer can do, and he can line up inside, he can line up outside as well. The Bucs are going to have a lot of versatility at receiver
Yeah.
with Palmer and with Jalen McMillan. The speed and versatility to really line up anywhere, and also special teams. I know we talked about Bucky Irving, we mentioned Cameron Johnson before. Trey Palmer might be the kick and punt returner this year. There's just so many options for him this year to make an impact on the team, whether it's at wide receiver or on special teams too.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point in terms of like versatility and the wide receiver room because you have Mike Evans obviously outside as the X. Chris Godwin's going back to the slot, but he can also play on the outside. McMillan can do both, and then Trey Palmer, if he's in motion and draws like a linebacker, the nickel back is
Yeah.
his assignment, he's going to blow right by him. So on offense, I mean, there's a lot of weapons Baker Mayfield has at his disposal to play around with. But with Trey Palmer, if they can weaponize his speed and truly make it a factor, it's going to open up so many more things for the rest of the wide receivers. And if Baker Mayfield can get the ball out quickly, Trey Palmer beats his assignment, that's going to equal big plays. That's an easy equation.
Yeah, I think that's key for Baker this year. Maybe get rid of the ball just a little
A
bit
little bit.
faster than he did the year before. And then obviously comes with chemistry and timing as well. Now, if this next guy is a weapon for the Bucs this season, things are going great. It is rookie tight end Devin Culp, Adam, that you specifically had your eye on. What makes you like Devin Culp and what he could do for the Bucs this season?
Yeah, I think again it stems from the speed. So Devin Culp at the NFL Combine led all tight ends with 4.47. That was what he ran, and although he weighed in at 231 pounds, he's close to almost 250 now. He's put on a
Yeah.
lot of weight over the offseason just to kind of handle bigger assignments when he's asked to be a blocker or to even like just mitigate the size difference of NFL defenders. I think that'll help him a lot. But he offers something different that no other tight end in the room does. Like Kate Otton's a well-rounded guy. Payne Durham can offer value
Yes.
in the red zone. Keeps the blocker. What's Devin Culp? Is he the big play guy just waiting to be unlocked? I'm really curious to see because at Washington with 3 different wide receivers McMillan one of them, making all the big plays. He was kind of forgotten about in the aspect of being like the fifth or sixth option for the Huskies offense. If he can make the most of his chances, kind of like some of the other skill position guys, you may see him climb that depth chart, beat Keefe as the tight end, and maybe see the field sporadically and be used creatively.
Right. That's his number one competition this year. Like, yes, you want to make plays, you want to have a lot of receiving yards, you want to prove you're a blocker, but Devin Culp's got to look at this training camp being like, I have to beat one person, and that's Keefe,
Yes.
and I'll make this team. And I'm not trying to knock Keefe by any means, but at this point, I don't really see how much better Keefe is going to get. And that's just the nature of the NFL. It's so, you know how tough it is to become an NFL player? Like the percentage, it's like less than 1% that you make it to the NFL. So I think it's great that Keefe has gotten this far. I just don't know, unless the Bucs like need a true fullback and they just say Keefe's our guy at fullback, which I don't think that's going to be the case.
Mhm.
I don't really know how much more Keefe can bring to this team, where Culp has size, has a lot of speed, can bring something a little more tangible to the Bucs. But shout out to Keefe. Obviously, he's an important locker room guy as well, and the players like him, and there is that importance too. So we will see. But I think for the tight ends, it's really kind of just Devin Culp, Tanner Towla as well. I think
Yeah.
has an opportunity to throw his hat into the ring, and Keefe kind of lobbying for that last tight end spot. So that's all of the offensive sleepers that we have, and I'm a fan of all football. I love offense and defense. But when it comes to betting on players, it's usually way more offensive centric than it is defensive centric. You've heard me talk about how much I loved betting on the receiving yards for Mike Evans. I'm going to look at that again this year. Probably do it for a lot of the Bucs offensive players. Maybe I'll do a separate YouTube video about it before the season gets going. But if you want to play some futures bets on the Buccaneers, you can go and do it over at mybookie.ag using the promo code PEWTER when you sign up on the app with MyBookie. I can't wait until football season for it to start, but we still have a couple other sports to hold us over until football arrives. We got the Olympics coming up. Obviously, you can bet on a lot of different Olympic games. Men's USA basketball and women's USA basketball is a ton of fun to watch. I was watching the men's team last night. They went up against Canada in an exhibition game. You can bet on that. When they play their games, you can bet on that too. Soccer is still going on right now. You have the Copa America has been very exciting so far, and their final is on Sunday night. I believe it's Argentina against Colombia. So you're going to see Messi. You're going to see Colombia, who has a really exciting and passionate fan base. Obviously, some stuff went on yesterday with Uruguayan players going into the crowd. And the European Championship, the European World Cup, is Sunday afternoon as well. England against Spain. I know we have some English Buccaneers fans, I'm sure, are very excited about it. So you got those games going on. Baseball is rocking and rolling at the moment. The All-Star break is coming up. The Mets played this afternoon as well and already won, so that was great. So there's a lot of great sports to bet on, and then sooner rather than later, football will be back, so you can bet on the Bucs, college football, the NFL, and all of that fun stuff. And when I am betting, it's on MyBookie because it's my preferred platform. So for those of you in the gang who haven't signed up yet, this is your chance. Sign up and make a deposit using the promo code PEWTER, that's PEWTER, and start playing with house money today. You sign up in MyBookie, you get free money in your account. Absolutely free. So even if you learn from Plant City Math, you know that is a heck of a deal. So bet anything, anytime, from anywhere, only with MyBookie. Check out their online casino as well, whether you like blackjack or craps or baccarat or roulette. They have all of it, which you can play from the comfort of your own home. So check out mybookie.ag using the promo code PEWTER, that's PEWTER. Okay, let's move on to the defensive players. We'll kind of roll through this a little bit quicker since we're 50 minutes into the show.
Yeah.
That just shows how much fun we've had in these conversations. Let's start out on the defensive side. Tyrek Funderburk, a guy that Todd Bowles has talked about a good amount, said he was one of the standout players. Cornerback is a room where someone could really slip through the cracks just based on the depth after, well, based on Jamel Dean's injury history, but after Bryce Hall and Tavier Thomas, I think there's some good competition with Keenan Isaac and Funderburk for maybe one of
Yeah.
the last cornerback spots.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at it, it's high praise to be getting a good word from your head coach, and especially a
Yes.
guy like Todd Bowles, who his whole pride and joy, his whole baby is the secondary. Being a former defensive back, like he appreciates high IQ, great communication, and just the ability. So for Funderburk to really shine, he picked off a pass and he's picking up the playbook quickly. That speaks volumes about just how much he could be a sleeper. And like as you mentioned, this cornerback room is kind of there for the taking beyond Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum because there's a lot of uncertainty, like new players added to the mix, young players who haven't really gotten a lot of time on the field. If Funderburk shines in training camp, he may compete for that fourth, fifth cornerback spot and even see the field his rookie year. Todd Bowles last year showed the trust to put Christian Izien out there, threw
Yep.
him into the fire like as an undrafted guy each week, and he held his own. He filled in admirably. Why can't another defensive back do that? And it very well could be Funderburk.
Yeah, Kayvon Merriweather as well, a safety who got a little bit of playing time, but really just another example of the Bucs and Todd Bowles specifically trusting undrafted free agents in roles on the Buccaneers, whether it's defense or special teams. So Funderburk could be the next one. Obviously, his competition with Keenan Isaac is probably what we're looking at in terms of last spot on the roster or in the cornerback room. So that'll be a good one to watch. Another good one to watch is the linebacker room. Someone I wrote about, who is a friend of the program, is Servassier Dennis. And the reason why I think he is a sleeper is not necessarily because, oh, he was a late round pick the year before. I think he's a sleeper because he's got a chance to make an impact on this team and have a role. Now, what will that role be? Well, let's assume that, and I know you shouldn't assume, but let's hypothesize that
Yeah.
Levante David and KJ Britt are going to be starting. I know Todd Bowles, and he does this a lot with his outside linebackers, but to agree, inside linebacker too, of just going through shifts of like, all right, this series is your series and things like that. But what I would love to see from Todd Bowles is don't do these shifts and have your best players in roles that fit them the best. Whether it's, using something like Marquise Watts just on a pass rushing down instead of, all right, you're going to play first, second, and third down, and we're going to ask you to stop the run. I think there's a shot that Servassier Dennis could be a third down inside linebacker and be more of a coverage guy, taking KJ Britt off the field. Or let's remember, he was also known as a blitzer at Pittsburgh. So maybe he comes in on third down. One play, he's in pass coverage. The next play, he's the one blitzing, and you leave Levante
Yeah.
David in that type of coverage. Remember, Servassier Dennis, much like his Pittsburgh teammate, Kalijah Cansey, got injured in the preseason, and I think it really slowed him down. A healthy preseason for Servassier Dennis could really help him solidify that role as the first inside linebacker off the bench, because the Bucs do cross train their guys. So if something happens to Levante or KJ Britt, Servassier probably will be the first guy.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it in the past with like players serving different roles in Todd Bowles' defense. I think it's a way Bowles can really elevate his status as a head coach if he's able to properly rotate and utilize guys in different ways. Like he does it on blitz packages, but if Servassier Dennis can be the third down inside linebacker, Marquise Watts can be in on passing downs, all the different moving parts in the secondary. If he can use his personnel to play the best defense possible, I think that speaks volumes about his status as a defensive play caller. Somebody like Servassier Dennis really does have a lot of value. I mean, we saw it last year in training camp, his ability to pick off passes. Like, there's
Yes.
a lot of value in his coverage ability. And I guess people are sleeping on him being an inside linebacker because KJ Britt's probably the likely starter, but
Mhm.
don't sleep on his role in the defense still.
Yeah, I think he's going to have something to do with this defense one way or another. This next player we will discuss, also a friend of the program, and we're not just picking guys because they are friends of the program, but Jose Ramirez, the outside
Yeah,
linebacker. I think the best thing Jose Ramirez has going for him is he's another player that you could put in the category of just went through a complete body transformation this summer or going into this offseason and now the new season. He bulked up a lot more. He looks way more in shape than he was a season ago. Let's remember, like he was drafted by the Buccaneers, but Tampa Bay opted to call up Marquise Watts, who was an undrafted free agent. So he's got a big hill to climb to have an opportunity to get in this rotation on the Bucs defense. I think he's going to be a practice squad guy again, but will get called up on game day this year. He's got speed. He obviously got to the quarterback a ton when he played college football at Eastern Michigan. He's going to have to really put it together this season, but again, that's why he's a sleeper. If Randy Gregory's out of the picture, still pretty difficult. But again, he went through the body transformation, and that should help him coming this summer.
definitely. And you mentioned like Randy Gregory being out of the picture, Shaq Barrett's out of the picture, Cam Gill's out of the picture. Somebody has to take those snaps somewhere, right? Marquise Watts is probably one likely beneficiary of that. Yaya Diaby is going to be probably the full-time starter, but there's still room for somebody else to make their mark, make their case. And why not Jose Ramirez? He was drafted last year, and his pass rushing ability has drawn compliments from Luke Gedeke, from Tristan Wirfs, had 18 and a half sacks his last 2 years at Eastern Michigan. If he can show the ability to get after the quarterback in training camp, make life difficult for those backup offensive tackles, he could be the sixth outside linebacker.
He could. And the next two players we're going to talk about, it's the same position. One of them got an opportunity last year because of some injuries that went on at the position. But if you're dealing with your own injury and you want the best medical care possible, there's nobody better to work with than Christopher Lugo and the Bay Area Modern Medical Center. It's all very personalized. So, are you tired of feeling like just another number in the waiting room? At Bay Area Modern Medical Center in Tampa, we believe you deserve personalized care that puts your health and well being first. So, meet Christopher Lugo. He has over 24 years of medical expertise as a primary care provider. He's dedicated to your overall health, but that's not all. Christopher specializes in weight loss, anti aging, and hormone replacement therapy, including testosterone treatments for both men and women. So, men, listen up. Testosterone can be affordable. That's the most important thing in all of this. Don't let age slow you down. Reclaim your vitality and get back to feeling great. Turn back the clock with the consultation at Bay Area Modern Medical Center today. You can visit BAMMC.com to explore their range of testosterone and weight loss treatments. Don't just take my word for it. Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds is a very satisfied patient, and he can't recommend Bay Area Modern Medical Center enough. Ready to experience healthcare that revolves around you? Book your appointment today, once again, at BAMMC.com. You can also give them a call at 844-789-2266. That's 844-789-2266. The Bay Area Modern Medical Center from Christopher Lugo, where your health is their priority. All right, Adam, the last two players we are going to talk about are inside linebackers. They are undrafted free agent Kalen DeLoach and also an undrafted free agent, but he's been on the team for a couple of years now, J.J. Russell. Adam, tell me what you like about these guys. And, man, it's going to be quite the competition at inside linebacker this season.
Yeah.
We just talked about Servase Dennis and now Russell and DeLoach, who's really made a splash so far. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it is. And with all those names, I mean, there's 5 inside linebackers there that you really like for different reasons, for different abilities that each of them have. Starting with Russell, the man on the screen there. What I like about him a lot is just his ability to flash whenever given an opportunity. Last preseason, whenever he was on the field, he was making plays. He was a steady presence. He was forced into action last year against the Panthers. Him and Ryan Neal were the inside linebackers, and Russell really shined. Josh Capo pointed out that he had a really it was like a 79 PFF grade. Like he was more than capable as an inside linebacker, and he just really didn't get much of a chance after that. With Servasi Dennis ahead of him on the depth chart, with Levante David and Devin White. Devin White still getting starting snaps for much of the season. Russell was kind of the odd man out. But in training camp this time around, if he's able to continue making plays, it's really going to be hard to keep him off the field just based on his track record of making the most of his opportunity. He could be getting more snaps this season too. And then
It's really
I
sorry. I was
I
just
was
gonna
just gonna
say
say,
it's really difficult for like a fourth string player to have a lot of confidence in. But JJ Russell, for whatever reason, I do. That's all I want to
yeah,
say. So feel free to proceed.
yeah, I was just going to talk about Deloach too. So he's gotten a lot of buzz as being a former Florida State player. They attract a lot of attention, but Levante David also gave him a shout out. And
He
I
did.
myself, I hold a lot of weight into when the head coach or other players, especially guys of David's caliber, talking so highly about a guy. And Deloach, he's undersized as much as LVD has been throughout his career, being just 5'11, 210 pounds, but he made an impact last year for the Seminoles. He was a blitzer, and he's really quick, 4.47 speed. His ability to be versatile and kind of play a hybrid role, that intrigues me. If he can be, man, he's quick enough to be in the nickel. He's quick enough
Yeah.
to come off the edge. Like there's so much there for Todd Bowles to unlock. It really makes him intriguing. He may not make the 53-man roster, but if he makes a practice squad, eventually he can carve out a long-term role in the NFL.
Yeah, there's a reason why Deloach was one of the more highly sought after undrafted free agents. And I think the Bucs, in a sense, benefited from the fact that from the outside looking in, there's an opportunity for undrafted free agents to make a stamp, make their presence felt at the linebacker position. And his speed, I think his traits, his skill set, and it's not anything on Frosty Dennis or JJ Russell. He has the best ability to be able to rise up the ranks the
Yeah.
fastest based on his speed, no pun intended. But like because of that, because he's shown that he can catch the football so far, it's going to be very important for him. Because remember, Savante Dennis got off to a great start, but then he got injured. Obviously, nobody wants to get injured, but I think it's even more important for Kalen DeLoach. If he's there every single day, I just think he's naturally going to impress
Yeah.
one way or another. And he's going to have that opportunity on special teams, like someone was saying in the chat a moment ago. So he's going to have his opportunities. And like we kind of said from the beginning, Todd Bowles probably puts more faith in undrafted free agents than other teams around the league. I think Deloach, it's a great opportunity. And you got JJ Russell waiting in the wings. And I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with that. I mean, again, we want to be in a situation, let's remember, where you don't have to turn to these guys, at least just yet, because you're going to have KJ Britt and Levante David. So these are just break glass in case of emergency type of situations. But I feel good about Servatier Dennis. I am confident in JJ Russell based on what he's already done for the Bucs in playing in some situations. And I think Kalen DeLoach probably has the best skill set out of really any of the guys. So not the best linebacker room after Levante David, but a lot of up and coming potential, which is really all you can ask for from any player or from any team. So maybe the linebacker position really is just a sleeper more than anything
Yeah.
else. But I think we had really some great suggestions. Oh, by the way, I don't think I put the defensive sleepers in the chat. Let me do that. You can just check it out on pewterreport.com. Came out this week on Tuesday when we drop every PR roundtable. You know what? I'll do it real quick for the Pewter people because I love the Pewter people. I had it up before. Take me 2 seconds. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, so if you want a little more insight and analysis, I know we just broke it all down, but you can check it out on pewterreport.com as well. I just put it in the chat. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. We covered a lot with these sleepers. Training camp starts on July 24th. So we are less than 2 weeks away at this
Already.
point. Yeah, crazy to see, but very excited. Going to get everything rocking and rolling. You could see everything that we do over on pewterreport.com. You can follow us on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. We got the podcast. We got Scott's Pewter Pulses. We have various reaction videos that come out. We have stuff from press conferences when they go on and practice, and you'll see a lot from training camp and into the season as well. So make sure you subscribe to Pewter Report TV. Please like and please leave a comment as well. You guys have been great with the comments when the show is done. We really appreciate it. And yeah, keep it coming. That would be great. That's going to do it for us on today's show. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We love you, Pewter people. Have a great rest of your week and a weekend. And we will see you on Monday at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out. Later, everybody. Enjoy that weekend. Peace.